crisis. Just because you can sing, that doesn't exempt you from a crisis. Just because you got money, that doesn't exempt you from a crisis. If you're going to live in this life, then you have to live with the expectation that at some point, at some juncture, at some turning point in my life, I'm going to have to deal with a crisis. But for every crisis that comes in my life, I have the power to demonstrate who Christ is. Look at your neighbor and say, I'm supposed to show who Christ is.
I'm supposed to show who Christ is.
I'm supposed to show who Christ is. And so while nothing about life is predictable, you have to rest assured that God is consistent. And you have to be flexible to the adjustments of God. He makes adjustments. Things are going to change. And seasons change. And people change. And attitudes change. But God remains the same. You just got to show your Christ as who Christ is. So a congregation of people, there's a congregation of people here in John 5, including the man that believed that just showing up at the pool will bring about a change. This body of people failed to effectively handle a crisis, and now they are stuck in a mess. Now they are stuck in a mess. Now watch this. Jesus takes notice not of the crowd, but he notices just one particular man. He notices this one man that spent a great deal of his life with no change. Isn't encourage my brothers and my sisters that no matter what the situation is, God sees.
Yes, he does.
I understand that the Bible said that this man spent 38 years. He spent 38 years with this infirmity. Now, if you are reading the text, we don't know exactly what the infirmity is. We just know his tenure in the struggle. All we know is that he has an infirmity, but we don't know what kind. Now, what Jesus does, he does something interesting to me. He asks him a question. He said, will thou be made whole? Now, my sarcastic self thought that was very oxymoronic, because surely if I spent 38 years of my life coming to this pool day in and day out, surely my expectation is I don't want to be like that. And can I find any witnesses in here that you come to church week after week expecting a change, expecting things to turn around in your life, and God seems to ask you a simple question: will thou be made whole? Now I said, well, or understand a man's mind, you have to probe them through a question. Questions probe us and reveal to us our consciousness. In other words, the question reveals the man's consciousness. Now, while I know the man's location, he's at the pool, and I know his tenure with the sickness is 38 years, it's not until he starts talking that I understand what type of situation he's dealing with. He is impotent. He's impotent, or in other words, impotent by definition means he lacked the effective power to move. He couldn't move, or in other words, he was in a state of paralysis. I thought this was interesting, because to be paralyzed, it means that my eyesight still works, my hearing still works, my taste still works, all of his other senses work. He simply could not move. Now, in other words, what are you saying, preacher? In other words, he could see the opportunity, he could hear the opportunity, he could taste the opportunity, he could smell the opportunity, he could confess out of his mouth the opportunity, but never experienced it because he lacked the power to move out of his situation. Y'all ain't saying nothing in here. How many of us have been seasons of our lives? We saw the opportunity, we heard the opportunity, we watched the opportunity, we smelled the opportunity, but never experienced the fullness of God because we didn't have the power to get up. We didn't have the power to get up and move into the rightful place that God has ordained for you to be in. Watch this here. Sherry, this is significant because this question exposes his mentality. Now, Jesus could have just cured him, but he rather wanted to heal him because healing goes deeper. He could have just cured me. He could have just told me to get up and start walking, and I would have been walking, but he desired to heal me. He wanted to get down on the inner man and clean out everything that does not match him. God was saying to me that before I just fix you, I got to first refortify and correct and renew and change your mind. How do you know all this? Because the Bible said it like this. So a man thinketh in his heart, so is he. You can go only as far as your mind. Y'all ain't saying nothing. You can go as far as your mind. So in other words, if you think low, you're going to live low. If you think broke, you're going to be broke. If you think negative, you're going to be negative. It's not until you change your mind that you change your experience. Look at your neighbor one time and tell them, I changed my mind.
I'm changing my mind.
His mind, Demetri, couldn't even get him out of the bed. His mind couldn't even get him out of the bed. And the issue with many of us, myself included, is that our thoughts cannot get us past the moment. So we have to let this mind be in us, which was also in Christ Jesus. Be ye transformed by the renewing of your mind. You got to change your mind. You got to change your thinking. Because if your mind isn't renewed, you will just revisit another cycle. If your mind isn't renewed, you will just revisit another cycle. The cycle is not broken until you change your mind. Scream in this atmosphere, I changed my mind. His comment exposes what he thinks. His comment exposes what he thinks. TJ, he says, will thou be made whole? Now what's interesting, Mike, is that the man never answers the question. His reply is, I have no man. He doesn't answer the question. He only presents an excuse. And how many wasted seasons of our lives have we experienced because instead of answering the question, we presented an excuse. We are now